Hi, I'm Rob King. Welcome to Homebrew number 36. Today we're brewing up a Dunkel. Now this is a German dark lager that we're brewing up especially for the Euros, and it's a long one because there's a 90-minute mash and a 90-minute boil involved. We'd better get started. This is the Homebrew Masterplan with 15 homebrews aligned to 15 special events throughout the year. We are in June and it's going to be the Euros. Now we have both the Euros and the Olympics back to back. So it's going to be a German lager followed by a French Pilsner. So it's going to be a very fizzy couple of months. Let's just hope the Dunkel is better than my singing. Football's coming home, it's coming. The ingredients for this recipe were all a birthday gift from my work colleagues, so this is a quick shout out to them with a big thank you for the German Dunkel. The fermentables for this recipe come in at 2.53 kilograms. The grain bill for this then starts with 1.5 kilograms of dark Munich malt, 850 grams of best Pilsen malt, 75 grams of Cara Munich 101, 50 grams of Carafa 2, and 50 grams of Melanoidin. This is just a single hop, 42 grams of Tettnang. Yeast is the Fermentation Safe Lager W34/70 and we'll be using a whole packet of this. Finally, we're going to need 17.6 litres of bottled water. Moving on to equipment then, the first thing you're going to need is a brew kettle. Now this is a tea urn of types. It was actually a £30 Aldi mulled wine warmer with a few modifications. You can check out the modifications on the link. This is a 10 litre recipe, so we're going to need a 10 litre fermenter. We have a hop spider there which we'll use later on, and also the pump for the brew kettle. For measurement, we're going to need a refractometer, a hydrometer, a pH meter, a thermometer and some scales. This is a brew in the bag recipe, so we're going to need a bag and clips. We'll also need a sieve later on when we remove the bag from the wort. Also, other bits of equipment that you're going to need are a large spoon, some sanitizer and potentially a pipette for lactic acid later on. The water profile is going to be a dark lager. Therefore, the water chemistry is going to require 1 gram of baking soda, 1.1 grams of calcium chloride, 1.1 grams of canning salt, 0.9 grams of chalk, 1.9 grams of Epsom salt, and 1.9 grams of gypsum. The first step then is to heat up 14.3 litres of water and start to bring up the temperature to the strike temperature of 70 degrees centigrade. As the water heats up, we can add the water chemicals and make sure we stir them in to dissolve them fully. As the water heats up, we can add the brew in the bag just to get ready for mashing in. Add the grains and stir well to make sure there's no clumping. Mash temperature is 68 degrees for 90 minutes. We're just a little high, about 69, we want 68, so we'll seal up. Should be good. After 15 minutes, we're going to take a sample to check the pH. Wow, the aroma and the colour already looks great. This is a quick side note on the refractometer. I used it a little bit last time, but I was still getting the hang of it. This is distilled water, which you use to clean, but also to calibrate. So that is dead on the line. Having cleaned it and checked it, the real reason of course is to test some wort. So that's coming out somewhere close to 1045, that's rather high. We'll be able to compare that to the hydrometer reading in a second, that's just cooling down. Now categorically the best method for cooling was to put it in my blender cup because that cooled it down really quickly for the future. So let's see how we're doing. I'm calibrating to my refractometer. It's coming in at 1046. So of course it's the P. Oh no. Okay, clean up after the disaster. Need a new measuring cylinder. This is what's important though. 5.40. That is an acceptable range, thank goodness. No further additions needed. We didn't have space for all the volume, so now is the time to heat up 2.6 litres of bottled water, which we will add between mash and boil. Our 90 minutes are up, so it's time to raise the temperature, and we can now remove the bag, allowing the grains to drain. This is our pre-boil sample, which we're going to allow to cool down. Our top-up water is now near boiling, a similar temperature to the brew kettle, so we can mix that in, so we now have the correct volume. Almost there. We have reached the boil. This is going to be 90 minutes and there are no immediate hop additions. New toy. Our first hop addition then comes at 60 minutes with 25 grams of Tettnang. 25 grams of hops seems to be quite a lot of hops to be adding at this stage, and it really does come down to the alpha acids. There is only 2.8% of alpha acids in these hops, which means that 25 grams is providing only 20 IBUs of bitterness. I have been relegated to my plastic measuring cylinder. Fortunately, I still had it. Measuring the pre-boil, pre-top-up gravity, we're coming in at 1.041, but this is going to come down a little when we consider the top-up. pH meanwhile has come in perfect at 5.39. The pre-boil post-top-up gravity is coming in very close to target at 1.037. Oh, I hope the beer tastes something like this aroma. It is fab. At 20 minutes we're adding 17 grams of Tettnang. Of course, the advantage of the hop sprider is I can leave it in without worrying about one of the hop bags blocking the tube here. Didn't quite think through exactly how it's all going to work when I add cooling. At 10 minutes we're adding 5 grams of Irish moss. Also at 10 minutes, and slightly creatively, we'll add the chiller. This allows it to sterilise before we need to use it. The 90-minute boil is over and it's time to turn down the heat. Open the valves. And turn on the pump. The whirlpool will help to chill more quickly. Time to begin cooling. No leaks. Fully submerged. Wow, that circulation's doing really well. It brings us to another topic, which is why I can never get the lid off the fermenter. So I'm going to try and see if some food grade grease will help. So quite how much I need to put on, I don't really know. I think if I screw it on and off a few times with this in place, and hopefully I'll spread it around a bit more. It really can't make it worse. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, back at cooling, it's going to be difficult to get the temperature down to below 18 degrees C. So I'm going to stop here and actually move it to the fermentator to cool further. So it's now time for transfer. Draining the wort that's stuck in the hop spider remains a bit of a challenge. Is there a better way of doing it than this? Whirlpooling helps to bring any of the sediment to the centre. So while that's going on, I'm going to have to do a bit of a clean up over here. It's time to turn off the pump and close those valves and just let the wort settle a moment before we move to transfer. Chaos ensues as I tried to take a sample for measurement. I wasn't quite expecting all of that pressure. However, it is time to aerate the wort as we transfer into the fermenter. Original gravity is coming in at 1.050 versus a target of 1.050. Spot on. I'm moving this to the garage overnight to allow it to cool down. We want to get it to 12 degrees centigrade. That's the ideal pitching temperature. The fermentator will help us get there. And it goes without saying, some more cleaning to do. It's the next day, the temperature is down to 12 degrees centigrade and we can pitch the yeast. This is the Safe Lager W3470 and we're using the full packet. We're also adding a further 5 grams of yeast nutrient for Mado. And finally, it's time to give it a good shake to mix it all up.
Okay, what we can also do, we need to get the probe to the back.
The last step then is to add some sanitizer into our weirdly wonderful airlock. Fermentation temperature is 12 degrees centigrade and we'll be able to monitor it through the temperature probe within the fermentator. Fermentation next. This is an example of some of the measurement from the fermentator, starting from the point of transfer through to pitching the yeast. Over this 22-hour period, you can see the starting ambient temperature was 16 degrees, moving up to 18 degrees when we added the probe to the side of the demijohn. Over the next period, you see the temperature reducing naturally down to 14 degrees, which is the point at which we pitched the yeast. Having pitched the yeast, the next step is to bring the temperature down to 10 degrees centigrade, which you can see the fermentator doing very quickly. Those spikes in temperature that you see coming up is the fermentation itself generating heat. We're going to continue to monitor the temperature throughout the fermentation stages.
Day 1. Day 2. Gosh, I can smell the aroma of this beer through the fermenter. Wowzers. Things are definitely slow. A temporary house guest. Into the fermentator.
The temperature has remained stable at 10 degrees centigrade for 5 days. We're going to start increasing the temperature in 2 degree increments. This is for the diacetyl rest.
Temperature change to 12 degrees. Some physical change. Well, this is the top of the diacetyl rest now, so like this for a few days and then we'll start to bring down the temperature.
The 2 degree increments stop once we reach 20 degrees centigrade and we leave it there for a few days before starting to reduce the temperature again.
Diacetyl rest is over and we're starting to reduce the temperature.
The temperature is reduced to 12 degrees and we're going to leave it there for 2 weeks before we move to bottling. Bottling day starts with sanitising all of the bottles and equipment before we begin. The carrying straps certainly got a bit crusty while they were in the ferminator. Otherwise, we're looking good.
Moment of truth. Will the lid come off? Oh, look at that. Food grade grease was the answer all along.
Transferring to the bottling bucket allows us to calculate the volume and work out the amount of priming sugar needed to carbonate. We'll take a sample now, but won't be able to calculate the final gravity until it warms up to room temperature. We have 7.5 litres in the bottling bucket. At 9 grams per litre, that's 67 grams of sugar that we're going to need to carbonate. Using a sugar wash allows it to mix in more quickly and thoroughly before we move to the bottles. I've protected the cupboards and the floor from splashing, otherwise bottling day can be quite a relaxed event. The bottles are moved back to the ferminator for carbonation and lagering. Plenty of sediment and cleanup left to do. The reason I do like to move to a bottling bucket is because you inevitably take a little bit of sediment with you and it gives me another chance to filter it out. However, there is a downside and a risk to this, which of course is oxidization. Final gravity is 1.012, giving us a beautiful ABV of 5%. And look at that clarity, looking good.
Ferminator is off for transfer.
We are day 48 and hopefully we are now carbonated, so it's time to move to the fridge and time for lagering.
The bottle at the back was the one with the probe for monitoring.
Well, the Euros have started and Germany are off to a great start, so here we are to test the Munich Dunkel. So, nice and cold, pretty clear actually, nice head, good carbonation, definitely have that light malty aroma. Small sip. Oh, that's quite nice. Now I tried one a little early and it was a little bitter on the first taste. I wonder if that was just a little harsh because it hadn't had a chance to condition. Ooh. Let's go for a longer sip, see if it still holds. Lovely and cold. Is a little bitter on the start, but you know, not too bitter. It's not IPA bitter, for example. It is very malty. You've definitely got that difference between this and perhaps a Pilsner. I find it closer to a dark ale in taste, but you've definitely got that carbonation fizz. which makes it a little different. That maltiness, particularly on the back of the palate. I have a genuine bottled Dunkel to compare it to. So if I have the time, I'll do a bit of a shootout. Cheers everybody, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. That's 7 down and 8 to go. We are almost at the halfway mark. The Dunkel was a success, but the plan has hit a bump in the road. The French Pilsner by Carbonation2024, I made an error in measurement. It's currently in the fermentator, but I'm a bit worried. The grain bill was not quite right. Then brew day for my Blue Moon clone, 45 minutes into a step mash. The heating element failed on my brew kettle and brew day was completely aborted. Oh, this is keeping life interesting. Tune in next time for the Cronenberg 2024.